Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 54 of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Take two, because I announced episode 56 last week. Not last week, an hour ago. I don't know, man.
I knew it felt like we skipped a few, but
well, I got thrown up, because traveling and then trying to get caught up with like our different recordings and stuff. I have like a little spreadsheet, but because we have like the Friday focuses and stuff now and everything's all mixed up. And then this is technically like our 1 year anniversary episode, which we've been doing this thing for a year now, which was, I guess, technically our 1 year was the one that came out last week with Corey and Ryan from the Weekly Jews, but we can treat this one as our 1 year episode, I guess, which means nothing's going to change. I mean, we could be like one of those podcasts where we just like get wasted over the course of like an hour. We could.
I thought we were going to do a giveaway. We're going to give away a house. Like to the 76th caller that calls in.
Yeah, the 76th review that we get
gets a free house
on iTunes gets a free house. So currently we have 15 reviews. So what we need is for 60 people.
Get out there and get it done.
60th person. In fact, we actually have a house right now that you can have. We would be happy.
Shoot, I didn't think about that. Yeah, you could take over the tax payment on that thing.
You could. We don't have to deal with it anymore.
Let's do it. 76 reviews. You get the house. It's a beautiful 2-1 bungalow in the South Spokane Valley. You'll love it.
Yeah, it is beautiful. One that we picked up a while back and we're just starting to deal with now. Been 1 year, man. It's just pretty crazy that we've been doing this. Funny. I remember when we started it and our goal was to get through 10 episodes, and now we're at 54 of them. I almost did 56.
Yeah, we didn't even tell anybody that we had a podcast for at least 10 episodes because we're like, this is gonna suck anyways. So
well, that's what everyone says to do. They say don't even like tell anyone or do anything with them until you have 10, because people are way more likely to listen to them if they can see that you have a little bit of a track record. And also too, if you're like, I mean, I think a lot of people do, they post like 3 episodes and they're like, go and post on their social media, oh, I launched this podcast, you should go listen. And then they get like 3 downloads, and then they get super dishearting. And you're like, why am I doing this if no one's listening?
Well, and honestly,
but I mean, it takes a
while. It does, and you kind of suck at first. Like I sucked at first. Like it takes a while to get in the groove of like how to do this. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, you want to know what I think is the most common thing that is said to me when there's like people that have been listening for quite a while. And they talk about like, oh yeah, you guys have really found your stride. It's really good. I think that Dan's really started to come out of this shit.
Right? Yeah, dude. I'm like, I'm just like, I was like, the mic turns on, man. It was hard for me to get over that. I don't know what it was.
I know. I'll always remember our first episode because I think I just sat there. Speaking of which, if you ever go listen to the first episode,
it's so bad.
Sucked. Even
that's going to be the most downloaded one. Yeah.
It is. We're not far enough away from it yet, but it's literally me talking and Dan just staring at me.
Well, I'm also not the guy. I'm not a very good interrupter, right? And so I got to get better at that, and that's what I've been working. I just got to interrupt people now.
Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, it's come a long way though, man. And then I feel like this past couple of weeks as well, things have just started to take off. I mean, the wholesaling business is going well. Like it's been, up and down with the market.
Yeah, good.
To coming back from my trip, I feel like we've turned it up, and things are starting to happen. And then all of a sudden our the instant investor program starting to take off. We got I think 4 new people hopping in this week, some good traction coming there, and lots of good things.
Yeah, I'm excited about all of it. Like the funny thing about like saying like the wholesaling stuff's picked up, like we haven't changed our marketing, and none of the deals that we're closing now are from new marketing. It's just that consistency. Marketing every month. Exactly. Some months you're like, ooh, I don't feel good about that. But then the next month you're like surprised. It's just like sweet. You know what I mean? And I think like our September was in line with our historical lows for the business. And the funny thing is people hear that. And this is like the same kind of people that try to time the stock market. They're like, well, the worst months in the stock market are, I don't know, I'm just going to say like February through June. So they always pull their money out. Like I don't know that that actually helps you. Same thing with like, well, I've heard that in wholesaling, if June or September, I've heard in my local market, those are slow months. I'm just not going to send marketing that month. Well, that's just not how it works. You have to have the leads. You have to have that consistency. And yeah, some of your marketing is not going to actually land. That's why you get a 1% response rate or 2% or on the high end, and so it's a numbers game. Anyway, go ahead.
And I mean, and a big part of that too is just because someone receives your marketing doesn't mean they're making that decision right then. Like there's a lot of people that received our marketing in September that decided to reach out to us in October, but their gears started turning when they received their stuff in September. But they just were choosing to not make, a move at that period of time. So that's where that consistency is so important. It's like that with every business. It's like people say, I mean, it's all about brand recognition. Like I've heard people say things like, why would Coca-Cola spend whatever million amount of dollars to advertise the Super Bowl? Everyone knows Coca-Cola. Right. And it's like, they do, but it was highly likely that you weren't thinking about Coca-Cola until you saw that. And I guarantee you that they have a metric for how many people buy Coca-Cola immediately after seeing that advertisement, because it was not on their mind. And then it was, and they're like, what sounds good? I'm going to go buy Coke. And they freaking go down to the corner store or do whatever. They text their wife who's out the store buying more nachos. And they're like, yeah, can you get some Cokes for my, rum and Coke or whatever I want to have on
my rum and that's right. They call it a rum and Coke for a reason. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not a rum and cola, a generic cola. Oh man. That's how you got
that was funny.
Yeah, what I quite liked in South Africa, the traditional drink that they have at their barbecues there, they call them a braai. You're having like a braai cookout, and they drink brandy and cola, right? So it's like super sweet, super high alcohol, but it's such a popular drink there. When we went to the rugby while we were down there, you can actually get it in a can.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So it's like a brandy and cola in a can, and it comes in a.
I was gonna say, is it small or little? Because yeah,
it's big.
480 grams of sugar between the cola and the alcohol.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. But you get pretty plastered on those because brandy's not exactly.
No, that's good. It's good stuff. I don't know how you could. Well, I guess because you are. No, never mind. I was going to try to do the whole like South versus North Hemisphere, what time of year, because you can't drink brandy in the summertime. It just feels weird. So hopefully it wasn't warm out.
No, you can. It's mixed with cola.
You're having a barbecue. Touche. Right on.
Yeah. And they say depending on how much you like your guess is how much brandy you put in, and they measure it by fingers. So if it's a kind of a shitty guess, you do like one finger of brandy. And then if it's like a good guess, you put like 3 fingers of brandy. So that way it's like more.
Dude, when I come to your house, you just give me the bottle. That's how good of friends we are. Here you go, bud.
Pretty much. Yeah. But anyway, so got some good stuff going on though. We got a few wholesale deals closing that we've been trying to get done for a while that were just kind of delayed because of buyers being weird, sellers going sideways. But I mean, the 4 that we have closing this month, 76,000 in revenue. So we'll have a decent month here for October. We got a flip listed, just kind of your nightmare project, which was mostly a nightmare just because if you guys remember back a while ago, we talked about the owner occupied tenant. Well, I guess it was a owner occupant. We bought the house, they became a tenant, and then they immediately submitted a maintenance request for all the shit that they had been neglecting for the previous 4 years, which we didn't fix because they were supposed to leave. And none of the stuff.
And the thing necessary. Too about that, it was a maintenance request to fix the sink in the apartment they supposedly weren't living in.
Exactly. Yeah. So it shouldn't have mattered at all
because they didn't want to pay rent in that apartment. Yeah. It was all dumb. Yeah. Anyways, whatever.
Yeah. But we got the one on the market though. And I don't know if we've had any interest or anything in it yet. Have you heard from a realtor?
I have not. I don't want to be like the nosy client, but I kind of also want to know if I've had any showings. Usually
I mean, it's been a week almost. I feel like you can ask.
I'll hit them up to see where we're at. But yeah.
Yeah. So this is great. So yeah, we're listed with another realtor who's some of their staff I know listens to this podcast. So if you're with
get your shit together and sell this place.
No, just like Dan might be reaching out, but hopefully it's sold by
right. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we know this market just takes longer. I mean, the houses I've got listed now, well, I guess I just have one. It's about to close. It's just like slow. But you get them like I'll go like a week without a showing, and all of a sudden I'll get a random showing, and then I'll go another like week and I'll get 3 showings, and then all of a sudden one of them's an offer. It's not like the offer you want, but it's an offer.
Yeah, that's how it used to be, though. I mean, back before the last 2 years it would take 2 to 3 months to sell a house, especially this one. It's kind of like a higher price point. It's a slightly unique property in the way that it has like this ADU and the layout and that sort of stuff. But I mean, it looks great. Like you did a good job with the rehab, which I mean, I fucking hope so since we went so far over budget. But
even guys like us go over budget.
I mean, have we ever knocked on over budget?
I
feel like that's kind of the general rule for flipping.
Well, it's always budgeted in like plus 10% at minimum. That's for damn sure. You just got to know that.
Yeah, minimum. Yeah. So, but yeah, so we got that one listed. Hopefully that will go soon. And that was kind of our last like big rehab that we had sort of as the market.
Yeah, from a flip standpoint, I don't see we didn't have anything else sitting up because we've had that. So we were sitting on inventory this year because we bought so many deals, and this is like the last bit of what I would call our inventory. Now it'll be looking at opportunities from a different point of view for us.
Yeah. I mean, it'll start to level out here, but because we have that, and then the only other rehab we have right now is our little micro homes that we bought on seller finance last year, which are kind of different because we're debating on if we just want to knock them down and like build on these lots, or if we want to, like we actually have one, but I guess Jeff gutted it. And we're just gonna like list it. Did you?
No, not yet. I was actually thinking about that this morning. So I would just talk through it, like game plan this thing. So yeah, we have 2 houses. Technically, I guess we paid 105 for each. Is that what we paid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, because we bought them on seller financing on the same note, it was like $210,000 for the total purchase price for both of them. So even if you knock them down, it's not like the lots were cheap, but they were renting and they were cash flowing. When we bought them, and then the tenants moved out of the one, which was a piece of crap. So we started gutting it. It's a double piece of crap now, and we can spend the money to fix it. But we're like, the challenge when you're doing seller finance, keep this in mind, is it's not easy to burn your money out unless you're just like, don't care about the guy or gal that you bought the place from on seller financing, who's like, I really don't want my money back yet. If you're just going to refinance it and there's no prepayment penalty, I guess we could do that, but it's not even, is it worth doing, for this little teeny 500 square foot thing, we could drop 50 grand in it easy. No problem. The whole back of the house was rotted, just floating there. We couldn't tell that when we first bought it, but like, it's just rotted out. Anyhow, so the idea being is like, what if we tear it down? Well, I got a quote. It's like $6,000 to tear it down. And then you're going to have like an asbestos test. I think you have to do according to the city, which is like $2,000, all that sort of stuff. So say you're 10,000 into just site development, getting this thing cleared out. We know we can build a house paying another GC for $315. So then if you think about the lot plus the tear down, which is at $115 plus $315, what does that put us at? $490 all in.
For 90, I think you added some numbers there.
Did I?
Am I wrong? Maybe. So the lot's 105, 315, or did I miss how much?
I just said $10K total for that, so that puts you at 115.
It's like 430
plus 315. Where did I get those numbers? You're right. I did add some numbers in there. Holy crap.
As I hope it's
no, okay. So it's like 430. So that's maybe what it appraised for when it's done on a new build. If it was a new build, 1,700 square foot house. But the idea being is, what if we sold it and took that 100 and we could probably sell for 120 as is, and then moved that money over, tear down the house next door, and then build it. Then your net is quite a bit less into the property. And so I talked to the owner about that yesterday, and I was like, I know we told you we weren't going to sell these right away, but like, we're kind of thinking about selling this because the house you sold us is such a piece of crap. And he's like, well, as long as it's still like backed up by something, as long as I still can have recourse and get an asset back if you don't pay me. I was like, well, we could just put it on the one next door. And he's like, yeah, that would work. And then like 2 minutes later, he's like, but then if you don't pay me, I only get that little house back. I was like, yeah. I was like, you're right. I was like, you're right about that. I was like, but we might tear it down and build like a $400,000 house on it. He's like, yeah, that'd be great. I'd do that. So he's like open to that idea, but he wants obviously his money to have an asset to protect it. So if we're not going to stop paying him, but he doesn't know that. So that's where we're at. So, I mean, that's kind of the deal, right? You basically, the way I look at it, and I'll just finish this up, is net, we owe him about 180,000. If we sell the lot for a profit of 120, we basically have a lot for 60, which is a great deal in Spokane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is a great deal. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different things we could do there too. Like whether we roll it over there, we roll that into our fund, you know, which we secured different loans and stuff that we do for people, or we have several other projects where we have other investors that we could probably
cash out.
Yeah. So like, cause we have some places that we have private money that has more expensive money than
this guy's money is 0% interest, right?
Great. 0% interest. Yeah. Yeah. He just didn't want to have a huge paycheck. So, I mean, we got a lot of options with it, but
to make it
complicated,
to complicate this further is the tenant, the tenants, the caregivers for the tenants that are in the one house, because they're special needs adults that live in the one house, said that they want a lease to own both of the houses as is.
See, but like, people always say that though. And then you're like, okay, cool. You need $10,000 per house to secure. And they're like, oh, I thought that I was going to pay you like the same amount of rent.
Exactly.
Like, give me the house in 3 years. That's like,
exactly. They're like, they don't understand lease to own at all. But if they actually say they did come up with 20 grand for like a down payment and they were willing to pay like a cash flow number, I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And something I'll say about this whole situation too, if you listen to this and your eyes glazed over and you're like, I don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. We had no idea how to do any of this when we jumped into this deal. What we recognized was that we were getting, $200,000 in cheap debt on these lots that we were 95% sure were worth a decent amount more than what the debt was. And it was 0%. And our philosophy was, cool, our risk is relatively low. We'll jump into it and just sort of like figure out how to do this. Right. And that's something that, a lot of investors, they always like want to have their specific box that they don't do out. They don't solve problems. They don't do all those things. But if you want to do this as a career and you want to make like actual money, especially in this current market that's so tight, you have to be solving these complex issues, and this is something like with our instant investor folks too. They've all been coming across these similar sort of situations where people have been like passing up on these opportunities, like, oh, it doesn't really make sense. And having, us help them sort of look at these different problems. They don't have the problem solving skills yet, or working with the community. We're able to be like, oh, so that deal that you were looking at, maybe you should do a novation. And, instead of like trying to buy it because the expenses are so high on the financing, and they're like, oh, well, I don't have a crew to do this novation. Well, it's like, cool. This other guy that's in your market, that's also in community does. You guys should work together and you can JV it. And it's like, oh, look at that. We just solved a problem. Now you guys are doing a deal, right? Or like, there's all sorts of different ways to do it. Or we have some other people that one of them got a lead that was not in his market. He didn't know how to analyze it and how to figure it out. So it's like, well, we got somebody else in the group who is in that market. What if you guys figured out something together and you did this deal together? And now, they're sort of solving a problem and they're going things outside their box, and they're going to be making real money because they're willing to do that. So, like if you want to do this business in this market, you have to solve problems, you have to collaborate with people, and you have to educate yourself on how to do these complex things. It's literally the only way. The days of, finding like some family who's been trying to sell their house for 4 months, they can move across the country and they just want to get out of it. Those days are gone. Even with the way that the market has sort of started to turn over, we're not going to have that just because of how much equity people have gained. People are going to be a lot less likely to walk away from it unless they're really desperate. And a lot of those people are coming with baggage, honestly. And then on top of that, there's also a ton of people like us who have now gone in, I would say, like institutionalized this sort of business. They're going to be taking up all those.
Yeah. We're looking at the easy deals, and we also have the wherewithal to take on these deals. Like you said, like we're literally breaking down our solution to this deal that we bought that we didn't know how to buy at first. But we knew, to your point, is like free debt is pretty cool. Free debt that comes with a cash flowing asset is really cool, regardless of how the other numbers worked out. And so that's why we jumped on it, because we knew there was value there where, if other people may have or looked at it and said, well, it doesn't hit all three boxes that I want. I want free debt. I want to cash flow a bunch of money, and I want no risk. well, that's never
pass.
So what we're trying to do here is like on air, like figure out what's our best solution to exit now that we're in this, kerfuffle with, we don't really want to rehab this house because we don't love it that much. We love the debt associated with it. So now how do we get creative and figure out how to keep that debt, which I really like the idea of cashing out another investor that's maybe paying 8% or 7% interest and replacing with 0% interest debt. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's all about solving problems at the end of the day, whether that's sellers' problems or your own problems. So cool. Well, speaking of solving problems, this is my attempt at a shift for our educational portion of this podcast. It is the end of the summer, start of the fall. There are a lot of people that listen to this that are in markets where the weather gets shitty. And as the weather starts to turn, you need to make sure that you're maintaining your rental properties and you're doing things appropriately, right? So they survive the winter, because sure as hell, most of your tenants are probably not going to do that. So for this portion, we were going to talk over the main things that you got to do to prepare your rental properties for winter, sort of how to go about organizing them. But really quick, a few words about our Instant Investor program, and we will jump into that. The Instant Investor program is our 12-week group coaching program, which includes a self-driven course and access to our private investor community. We will take you through the full process of how we find our leads, how we market, how we do our sales and follow-up, and how we determine the best strategy for every opportunity that comes our way. On top of that, you will also join a community of other like-minded investors nationwide that are all marching towards the same goals, and you will have direct access to Dan and myself, so you can continue learning and growing with us as we continue to adapt and grow our business. So whether you're a new investor or already established, our systems can help take you to the next level. So if you think you might be a good fit, go to the instantinvestorprogram.com and schedule a call, and we can have you talking to motivated leads in as little as 2 weeks. All right, guys. So preparing your rental properties for the winter months. Obviously, if you live somewhere like Arizona where you don't have these, you don't need to worry about these. You got to, I don't know, they have probably other problems they have to worry about. Maybe, I don't know, like old people dying in your properties because that's all you have is tenants.
Old people and the air conditioning shuts off and they just croak. Yeah, that's a real thing. Yeah, that's a tragedy.
Things that we don't have to worry about in the Pacific Northwest, really. But if you live somewhere that has winter or has, whether that's snow, that's heavy rain, that's cold, whatever, the winter months are a real problem for your rental properties. And it's something that you need to account for as you are sort of going through the year. You can't expect your tenants to do it. Like, even if it's part of your lease, that's one of my favorite things that when we talk to a lot of these sellers that are like, oh yeah, as part of our lease, our tenants had to maintain XYZ. And then you show up and you're like, hey, surprise, they didn't do that. And they've been there for 8 years.
1 out of 50 tenants will actually do something like that. Or they'll be proactive. Like we have one tenant where he's like, I cleaned the rain gutters that I installed myself. Like, oh, thank you. Like, that never happens.
I know, right? Yeah. But he has a vested interest because he's the one.
Exactly. Yeah. Now. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So he has some pride of ownership. But yeah, preparing your properties for winter, there is a bunch of things that you have.
When it's not just winter too, I think it's just like this annual. The winter time's a good time because there's a slowdown. It seems like you have less tenant turnover, generally speaking, around the holidays, and it's like a time where it's like, I should do some stuff, because here's the thing. I'll be honest. Like, when I buy a property, once I stabilize it, I hate going back to it. I never want to think about it once I stabilize it. Oh yeah. Whether you're managing it yourself or you have a property manager, like, you still need to do some annual things to make sure your properties are good, because generally speaking, they won't be if you just set it. You can't set it, forget it. I mean, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess, how do you manage it though? Because I mean, we have a bunch of them that we have to maintain. I mean, I don't maintain them.
Yeah, I mean, hit and miss. It's hit and miss. Because we do have different property managers, and we do have some stuff we self-manage, and we have some properties where supposedly the people are managing it in some level or fashion, right? We have some unique leases with that. But what do we do? I mean, I guess so. One thing I'll start with is like this concept of an annual walkthrough. Like, I hate doing that. I don't like it, scheduling it around my schedule and all that sort of stuff. But you should do that. Like, we had these one tenants that were placed in, I don't know, 6 months ago, whatever. And like, I kept getting the utility bill because they didn't start their utilities. So they're like, we're going to shut your power off. I was like, I don't really care. And I like messaged the tenant through our tenant portal, and then texted them because I have their phone number, and no response. They obviously went and called and got the utilities switched over, but they never responded to me. And I'm like, oh, I see what kind of tenants these people are. I'm definitely going to walk their house because they seem like people that are dumb and will do stupid things to your house by just leaving them. Just simple communications are helpful, right? Like if you,
what
Glenn,
property is
Glenn,
this? I don't even
Glenn.
Told me this.
Yes.
Is it?
It's
okay. Have they been there for
something
6
like that?
months?
I don't know, maybe 4 months, whatever, but very problematic. Yeah. Anyways, when somebody texts you, especially the person that owns the house you're living in, it's generally nice to be like, oh no, I did not know that. I'm sorry. Or something simple. So like, that's my indication that, I should probably walk it. Also, because when you go walk it, if you go inside of it, and if it's trashed, like tell them to knock it off, like do something about it, be proactive about it. And also make sure that'll let you know that you're not going to renew their lease because you don't want them trashing your house. Glenn, our property is a brand new place. We just renovated. I don't want them trashing it. We spent a lot of money on it to make it nice, not to be a rental, but it is a rental now. And that should mean we have lower CapEx, lower turn costs, all that. But if they're trashing it, that's not the case. So like an annual walkthrough, and you don't have to do it yourself. You can hire somebody to do it that you trust, like a handyman to do it. But there are just like little things you should be walking around and paying attention to. And for us, anybody that's like north of, I don't know, whatever that line of longitude or latitude is, whatever the horizontal one is. Exactly. Whatever that one is. It is like making sure everything is winterized. And what I mean by that is like, here's a good story. Like we had a house that we bought that we didn't own that long before winter. And it was an Airbnb, and like the washer machine, the pipe that goes in the washer machine's on the exterior wall, which you never want to put plumbing if you can avoid it on an exterior wall of a house because it freezes, especially if it's a 100-year-old house with shitty insulation. And so the pipe froze, the drain pipe froze. And so it was flooding water into the house. And so we had to go in there during the winter while a guest was there. And it cost us a pile of money to like unfreeze it and put heat tape on it. Like those are like little things when you walk a house prior to it getting cold, like look for that stuff. Look for your spigots. Is it a frost free valve? If it's not, you should probably make sure there's a shutoff valve to it because they will like freeze and like leak. I remember walking by one of my rentals and there was like a 4-foot icicle coming off the spigot, but it was not frost free and their shutoff valve on the inside was still leaking. So that just creates like a massive problem. Again, I was walking one of my personal rentals just last week, and I turned off the sprinkler valve so the blowout guys could come in, and the freaking valve was leaking, and it's in the ceiling, so it's like leaking actively. The tenants didn't tell me it was leaking actively, and I could have relied on the sprinkler guy to shut it off, but I wanted to go there and just to check on everything. But that thing was leaking. The drywall is all soft. I was like, damn it. So I got to figure that out. But that's something that would have gone on for a year probably and would have grown mold and would have happened while the tenants were there. And I would have had to pay extra just because it's so much harder to do stuff while tenants are there. So that walkthrough I think is critical because it helps you look for things. And I'll just one more note like on that, like we had this issue on the same property a couple of times, but one time I had to go there to shut the main water of the house off. And the valve was so old, it just disintegrated in my hands. And so now I have this valve that I can't do anything with. It was in the wintertime. And it's like the worst case scenario. So when you buy a house, find the main shutoff valve and make sure it's good. Just pay a plumber $250 to replace it if it's a crappy old one. And the thing literally disintegrated in my hands under the house. I'm like, what do I do? Like nothing in the moment, right? You're just kind of screwing yourself. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, yeah. So I think big thing is, when you're winterizing your house, pretty much anything that could cause any issues with water, you want to make sure that you're good. So if you have any exterior plumbing like that, make sure that's frost-free valves, sprinkler blowouts,
big ones.
That's something that often gets neglected. We've bought so many houses that have just fucked up sprinkler systems because they never blew them out and they froze and they burst. And the thing is too, is you find like a good landscaper, like they'll actually remind you because they want that reoccurring revenue every single year. Right. And if you can't find someone to do it, we've seen crackheads going around with like the rental air compressor from Home Depot on their truck. They'll blow it out. Like they might break it in the process, but at least, it won't freeze to death. So, like getting that done, cleaning out your gutters to prevent ice damming, right? Or anything similar there. One of the first flips I actually did several years ago, we did it kind of in the early winter, and we had like we couldn't see how bad the roof was, but we had gone and like replaced a lot of the soffits because there was water damage. And then it snowed a shit ton in like March that year. And it built this huge ice dam again.
Oh no.
And just rotted out all the soffits again.
Oh
I did
no.
it twice. So I didn't even know that was a problem. And we didn't think to clean the gutters. And of course, the Craigslist contractor I hired at the time who fixed the soffits didn't clean the gutters or anything. Yeah. So lesson learned there. So, you know, taking care of that. I mean, any sort of like yard cleanup that's going to cause water issues, right? Like even if you have something like I've seen some places where they'll have like different sort of foliage or like things like that sort of force water to sit at the base of the house. And so then it like seeps into the basement and all this sort of stuff. We actually dealt with that at the 6th place because there was so many leaves that like the grass was never draining because the water was never getting into the grass. So it would just sit in the leaves and would eventually just seep into the basement, which was a dirt basement flood, you know? So yeah, anything.
Yeah, water is the big thing, and walking around, making sure things are sealed up. We had an ice dam on one of our properties. Had nothing to do with bad gutters. It was just it's a low sloped roof, and that winter allowed that to happen, just because it was like this long freeze thaw, all that sort of stuff, snow built up, and it was leaking in through a window. It was coming up and around. Water will find its way in. And so just making sure you have all the places that you can see a problem, have those like safed up and ready to rock and roll, because water is your enemy. And for some reason, like half the time tenants just don't tell you. They don't pay attention. They don't even notice it. And then when you get on the inside, because you're doing your annual walkthrough, and so you got the whole exterior, that's a good time to walk through all the bathrooms, check the P-traps, check the caulking on the bathtub, make sure that they're not leaking, you know, outside of the shower and softening up your drywall, ruining your floor, because water is the enemy. And those are things that make it costly to own a property. And if you can prevent them by spending a little bit of time or money, it will help you just a ton, just to get out of it. The other thing I like doing when I'm on the inside is like, so of course we just check all the plumbing, check all the valves, flush the toilets, all that sort of stuff. But is HVAC, making sure you can either get it serviced or just make sure, like if you have a furnace, are they replacing it? Do you have a system in place to monitor them replacing the filters? Because filters, I had it happen. This is my bad on one of my student rentals. I just hadn't got down there to replace the filter for them because they hadn't been communicating with me. I was like, oh, in the summertime, it gets kind of weird with students. They're just here and gone. Well, they're like, yeah, the air conditioning's frozen. The air conditioning won't work. I'm like, uh-oh. Immediately knew it was. The filter was so clogged that it froze the whole thing up, and that's not good. And then it flooded the basement when it thawed. And they're like, oh, the basement's flooding. I was like, yeah, I know. So it's just like that stuff.
Yeah, that is super valid. Like the heat sources as well, because, you know, you're right. Even if people try to do these things like, oh, I'm going to have, you know, send them a furnace filter and they're going to swap it out. I remember I tried that once and I went to
they just had a stack of them
for something completely unrelated. They had a stack of ones that they had never swapped out. Like literally next to the fucking furnace. Like it would take them 2 seconds and they just didn't do it.
When you think they'd be incentivized to have clean air in their home, but they're not. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, but you know what will happen is the furnace will give out like halfway through the winter. It always happens in the winter because they're running it like crazy. And then they'll care and they'll be calling you, and then you'll have to do some BS, like put them in a hotel or something, because the whole house is like 30 degrees and they have 2 children.
Exactly.
This is definitely not based off of a real story that happened with a non-paying tenant that I was so livid about. Yeah. You know? And then she had the tenacity to complain the hotel I booked wasn't nice enough. When she wasn't paying me rent in her place that she didn't maintain and didn't take care of.
Yeah, people are wild like that. That's the case though. That's an edge case that happens more often than you think. And wow, what a pain. Yeah. But it's good to have just in general, like just have a checklist so you can avoid a lot of these things, and that'll help you along the way. You know, we probably have a checklist somewhere that we follow.
I think that you should make one. I should. Dan, and then we should give it away at collectingkeyspodcast.com
for free. For free. It's a freemium. I'll put that together because we do have that. And just so you guys know, like I'm not doing this on all my properties. I'll do it on some of them, but we have people we can send to do that sort of stuff. Because if you don't trust your property manager to do it, which I wouldn't trust them right away, they should be able to do it for you. But like hire a handyman that you trust. Say it's $50 an hour. It's an hour per property. And say you have, 10 properties, $500, and they're going to go around and they're going to do like little bits of caulking. They're going to make sure you're winterized on your spigots and that your valves are all operating, go through the inside, make sure there's no leaking, make sure the furnace filters are good. Like that is worth $50 to me. Like for every property, an hour, just go and do it.
I mean, even like $100. That's something that it's so easy to want to be cheap on, especially if you have a bunch of properties. But literally, if you don't do that and it leads to like a $5,000 or $6,000 problem in like a year or two, you should have just spent, the $100.
Absolutely. Like that's the thing. Just don't be cheap, especially on weatherization things. Don't be cheap on weatherizations, plumbing, all that sort of stuff, because those are things that damage your home the most.
Exactly. Because then what ultimately happens, you have to spend the $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 to fix whatever the situation is. Or you have to sell your house to us for 60 cents.
We'll be happy to fix it for you. Exactly. We'll be happy to fix it for you.
So perfect. Cool. So you can go to collectingkeyspodcast.com/checklist and you can get this checklist that Dan may or may not put together. If you go and look for that and it's not there, go ahead and send me a DM because it means that we immediately forgot after we finish this podcast.
Yes, exactly. I will do it.
But either way, that's the accountability right there. I think that'd be a good freebie for people. But anyway, guys, so getting into winter, take care of those rentals. I guess coming full circle, anything that's going to cause issues with water, anything that might be affecting your heat source, those are just like super basic things that you would want done in your home. So do them for your tenants as well. And if you don't do them because you don't want to spend the $50, $100, $200, A, you're a shitty landlord, B, that's on you when something happens to your property and it costs you a hell of a lot more. So definitely do those things. But all right, guys, well, thanks so much for listening. Please go and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast and share this with anyone who might find it entertaining or helpful or want to learn about real estate or whatever. Besides that, you can follow us on Instagram. I'm at Mike_invest. Dan is at InvestorManDan. If you want to learn how to invest like we do and buy huge discounted properties and join our rapidly growing community as well of other like-minded investors, go check out instantinvestorprogram.com and you can schedule a call with one of us. We have a ton of new things that are coming to there, to that whole program here very shortly. My goal is to have everything sort of like built out and to release around Thanksgiving time. So if you go and you register for that, we can tell you about them. But there's a bunch of stuff coming, so I'm super excited. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for listening. And Dan, last words?
Peace. See y'all next week.
Peace. See y'all next week. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.